Hey, this is Yusuf Alta here right now. Alright, obviously, as you know. Um, so I've been neglecting to answer some questions because I haven't really looked at my messages at all. And people have had some questions because of some of my latest videos. So let's get right down to it. First question is, hi Yusuf, wondered if you talk about the shifting of perception towards the crucifixion you've experienced? Question mark. As far as practicing as a Muslim, not believing in Jesus on the cross, to being orthodox and understanding the gifts that are given through it. Glad to hear. Okay, that's personal. Her mom is watching the videos too. Hope maybe garden stuff too. Any painting piece? No, it's just basically been me at the hospital. I mean, I've even had very rare time to work, although I still do work. I was just on the phone with somebody saying, yeah, I said, yeah, I have fun at work, and she says, well, I have fun not working, which really hasn't been the case. I've gotten back to work sparingly. I might have to go up to the Mayo Clinic very soon, though. Christ on the cross. You have to understand, in Islam, it's kind of like being a Roman Catholic, or I think that's the closest thing I can compare it to. You quite don't know all the things, you know, like my mother had always said, well, the virgin birth really is in the Bible. That's just something the Catholics made up. One, the virgin birth is in the Bible, you know, it's not something that's really, you know, it's not the major things, and people have differing views on them or opinions, whether it's, you know, canonical or not canonical, or just their own personal thing. The view of the cross. I remember after I stopped going to the masjid, I read the Coptic Apocalypse of Peter, or the Gnostic Apocalypse of Peter, where Jesus is laughing at the man dying on the cross, saying, how could they think they killed the Christ? The view that I was taught was basically it was Judas Iscariot that died on the cross, and not Jesus, or as the Muslims call him, Isa, which Isa isn't the Arab Christians don't call Jesus Isa. I think Jesus or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but see, the Quran is all very strange. Like, you'll hear many Islamic apologists say, well, look at the Bible, Noah's a drunkard, Abraham screws up, Moses sins, but in the Quran, they never sin. They're these perfect people, which I always found very skeptical. There are many Muslims that believe he did die on the cross, although there's many surahs. I don't know if I would be able to find it in here, which surah it talks about Christ not dying on the cross, but they definitely believe in an ascension, and what most Westerners don't understand is they believe that Jesus didn't die, whereas Muhammad did, and that Jesus, Isa, will come back at the end of time to fight Armageddon against the Dajjal, who has something to do with his eye, a protruding eye or one eye, and some people have said this is television, things like this. It was slow coming. I mean, I almost view myself as Constantine. Constantine really struggled with Christianity. It took him about 5 years. I mean, he still had Venus and stuff like that on his coins. Then he kind of slowly came into it, and that's kind of how it was for me. The first time I said I was a Christian, this was in my early 20s. I didn't believe Jesus died for anybody's sins. Obviously, I don't believe Jesus. Since I'm Eastern Orthodox, I don't believe he died as a blood atonement to take all of our sins away from the wrath of God and all this kind of stuff. But I was getting, I didn't know about the Eastern Orthodox Church back then, so I was getting heavily influenced from the charismatics and stuff like that at that point. It's the incarnation where I see the gifts come through. So it's, I mean, Islam is, it's very quick to dismantle after you see a crack in it. Christianity less so, because it's a book written over a period of time and there are historical events in there, whereas the Quran was just the words of an epileptic. And even if he really lived, I think they're actually Aramaic hymns, Christian hymns that got distorted. Again, just see my videos as Jesus is Muhammad, or did Muhammad exist? And that may clear things up for you. You had also asked about the Gospel of Barnabas. We would always bring this up at the Moshe. We would always bring this up, especially when I was a teenager and I was very much more zealous. And there is a whole political component to Islam, especially here in the United States, and the masjids are run by ISNA, which is Saudi Arabia, so it was very political. Just like most Muslims don't read Sahih al-Bukhari. I know many Muslims who've never read the Quran, who don't know what it means. They've read the Quran because they can speak Urdu, because they can pronounce the letters, just like an English person reading Spanish. Any English person can read Spanish. Now, they might not be pronouncing everything right, and they might not know anything of what they're reading, but they can actually recite it. Reading, that's the most important thing. The first revelation, Iqra, read. I can't read. Well, recite. And then he started reciting, and that was the first surah given to him, the first message from Jibreel. I don't know if that'll clear things up for you or just add more questions to it. And then the next question, I think, was, hi Yusuf, one more topic. One more I forgot to say. How your perspective on God changed while as a Muslim, from an angry, punishing God who wants rules, etc., understanding orthodoxy as a loving father. Also, anything about the different feasts throughout the year you have an affinity or memories of that might be able to share, hoping you'll... Okay, that's very personal. Just curious. Okay. Okay, in Islam, I was very ignorant, as most Muslims were. I was a good Muslim, in my view, which means I was a bad Muslim. I always had trouble with the idea of non-Muslims going to hell, and I always tried to find verses to say, oh, you know, this person go to heaven, this person go to hell. Because remember, my family's Muslim, but the majority of my family are Catholic, or Roman Catholic. You know, so I always considered them people of the book, but then again I couldn't, because I saw them as polytheists, praying to saints and this and that, and even though they didn't really pray to saints, but they weren't against it, and it was very strange. You kind of wind up making God into your own image instead of you being made into the image of God, and I think this is something that strikes at anybody who's in a religion like that. Now, orthodoxy, you're right, orthodoxy is something very strange and very different in the way we approach God. Like my video saying, I would tell God to fuck off if he told me to sacrifice my son, because you know, I just wouldn't. You know, I wouldn't do it. And that leads me into another question about sin, but I want to finish this one up first. yeah, heaven and hell, punishment, especially even the punishment in Western Christianity, to know that, yeah, God is not going to punish anyone, and that there's no heaven or hell. In Islam, it's Jinnah, and then I think the word we always used was Jahiliyyah, which was ignorance, which was the state of the world before Muhammad. And actually, we're said to live in a state of Jahiliyyah right now, um, which is without the Khilafah, without the Caliphate. So we always referred to hell as Jahiliyyah anyways, just the ignorance. Yes, it was very different. I always had a view of a very loving God anyways. It wasn't until the Western Christians had got to me that I started to get very worried about this type of stuff. It was basically the man of Muhammad, when I actually started reading Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Kathir, that my eyes opened up, and it was a terrible day for me, and I didn't want any of my Muslim brothers to read this stuff out of fear, because I knew people who had read this and who struggled with it, but nonetheless they were willing to turn blind and say, well, then we must harden our hearts. And that was the thing that I heard a lot. Too bad my heart is too soft. I wish my heart could be hardened so I could kill. And it was just it was something that scared the hell out of me back then. It still scares me today. Now, there's somebody who asked a question about sin, about, what is sin, why don't you sin? Well, sin means to miss the mark. Since the Septuagint was in Greek and the New Testament is Greek, it means to miss the mark, to basically, like shooting an arrow. Bishop Lazar described it as to misuse your energies. The reason why I made an early video about this. The reason why I don't sin is because it defies my dignity. Being Eastern Orthodox is like being a samurai or something. To sin would be like, ugh, I'm not gonna do that, or like to go out and just like a frat boy and have a bunch of sex with my ass hanging out, just doing every woman that was there. That's unbecoming. There's something knightly, there's something good, strong, honorable. This is why I say, damn, faith be damned. I don't have faith. I have faithfulness, I have loyalty. And there's something about respect in that. Now, if I were to go do all this stuff, I couldn't say, I act like a knight, I'm faithful, I will defend the widow, the orphan. This is where my belief in it, well, I don't care about an afterlife. I'd rather live a good, clean, honorable life, living in the kingdom here, because the kingdom is here, than some pie in the sky thing. I would rather die to help the widow, the orphan, the helpless. This is why, even my own personal belief, I will not in any way, shape, or form tolerate violence towards women, children, elders, or anyone who doesn't understand what violence is about. But I have no problem being violent towards those who understand it. Actually, I said this one time, and then somebody says, I saw something, and you sound kind of like some member of the Aryan Brotherhood or something, because it was almost what I said. And I've been waiting for them to send me that thing, or apparently it was on some National Geographic thing or something, that they're, I'll send it to you, you sound just like them, which I think that was meant more as an insult, but no, it's out of my own, I don't know if you'd say pride or whatever, but it's a discipline, and I don't want to disrupt the discipline. It's not something that I would do, because it would go against who I am as a person. It would go against myself, just like drinking dog shit, or with a straw, liquefying it and drinking it, or doing something, acting like a total ass. There's a certain form of respect. Act like a man. This is what I've been taught, act like a man. Not by orthodoxy, but this is what I've been taught by my elders, and I intend to do that. So I love orthodoxy. Why don't I sin? Because it goes against my nature. It goes against who I am. This may not be satisfactory for people, but that's why I won't. Why don't you go gamble and get drunk and go to whorehouses? Well, I don't particularly want to, and it's unbecoming. But we don't hate sex. We don't hate a lot of things. So it's very strange. It might take more than a video, and I'm out of time. Peace to you. May God save Serbia and Syria. Thank you for your questions. I will try to go into greater detail in the next video. Peace to you. Latest videos. So let's get right down to it. First question is, hi Yusuf, wondered if you talk about the shifting of perception towards the crucifixion you. Hey, this is Yusuf Alta here right now. Alright, obviously as you know. So I've been neglecting to answer some questions because I haven't really looked at my messages at all. And people have asked some questions because of the some of my videos to hope maybe garden stuff to any painting piece. No, it's just basically been me at the hospital. I mean, I've even had very rare time to work, although I still do work. I was just on the phone with somebody saying, yeah, I said, yeah, I have fun at work, and she says, well, I have fun not working, which really hasn't been the case. I've gotten back to work sparingly. I might have to go up to the Mayo Clinic very soon, though. Christ on the cross. You have to understand, in Islam, it's kind of like being a Roman Catholic, or I think that's the closest thing I can compare it to. You quite don't know all the things, you know, like my mother had always said, well, the virgin birth really is in the Bible. Experienced, question mark. As far as practicing as a Muslim, not believing in Jesus on the cross, to being orthodox and understanding the gifts that are given through it, glad to hear. Okay, that's personal. And her mom is watching the